Welcome back. We're back with Congressman Cleaver of the 5th District of Missouri. I think I'm correct on that.
Yes.
You have long been a housing advocate. I was reading your bio and information. I'm originally from New England and now live in Pennsylvania, so I had to do a little research on you. Um, but you've done great work, and I was just curious how much you think that might come from the fact that as a child, you lived in public housing.
Well, I think that is the motivating factor for me. Before I lived in public housing, I lived in something that today most people would view as housing for some animals. I did not live in a house with a bathroom or any kind of uh, water distribution inside the facility. We had a hydrant outside, and we lived in two rooms, six people, my mother, father, and my three sisters and me. And we had a tin roof. We had no windows, and it was an alley. It was a shack in an alley, and my father paid $5 a month for us to live in it, and it wasn't worth $5 a month. Today, most people would not allow their German shepherds to live in a facility like that. So that inspired me to want to deal with this issue and to prevent other young people from having to go through what my family went through. It's horrible, and the reason it was so horrible is I could walk about 25 yards, or maybe a little further, to a street called Kaufman, and they had these huge 2 and 3 story, almost mansion-like homes, and so um, it was you juxtapose where we lived to where people live just a short distance away, and it told the tale of two Americas, and there was a, a, two fish swimming around, and this older fish saw them swimming and said, "You guys must be enjoying the water." And they said, "What is water?" Uh, they had no idea what it was. It was natural. It was what they were supposed to be, and nobody should have to say what is house.
Yeah,
What is house?
yeah.
It is essential to the human creature, and just like fish function in water, we function in homes and facilities and places where we can have a decent experience. Just nothing exorbitant, but just decent.
Right. So, you have worked pretty hard, to one of the things I noted, by the way, about when you were young was your dad worked 3 jobs.
Yes.
There's an enormous amount of the working poor population of the United States to this day that can't make enough money for adequate housing. 2, 3 jobs, and they still can't pay the rent. And you focused, I noticed, a lot on rural housing, which is important to us as well because urban centers get a lot of attention about homelessness, but people don't really understand that there's an enormous population of rural poverty that are having struggling for housing. And when you were young, you were in Texas. Now it's Missouri where you focus on this rural housing. You want to tell us a little about that?
Yes. um, One of the things that I don't believe most Americans realize is that there is a great deal of poverty in rural America. And in some ways, the people in rural America, uh, not with any intentionality, um, have little understanding of the efforts to deal with poverty and houselessness in the urban centers. And so, in many cases, they will oppose those efforts. And if you want to find a place where housing is needed, go into rural America, and in some of the districts I used to represent, uh, how there had not been a new house built in almost 2 decades
Wow.
in some of those communities, and so we don't realize it, but urban and rural America are inseparably connected because they are experiencing the same thing. We had more schools on the federal lunch program in rural areas than in the urban areas. And nobody would have thought about it. I just thought I would check one day. And what that means is that the level of poverty or the level of acknowledged poverty is higher in the rural areas than it is in the urban areas. Nobody ever, I mean, few of us even think about that. And so we need to attack the houselessness all over, and we've got to get, I think, rural folk involved because they too are victims of uh, a nation that is enormously wealthy, ignoring the fact that millions of their citizens on this very day are not in a house that could provide just the basics for them, and uh, and some of it is even public housing. My family lived in public housing for 7 years. My father worked 3 jobs, saving money and lying to the public housing authority about having another job, because had he told them that he was working on other jobs, the rent would have increased.
Mhm.
And my dad's just turned 100 in July. He'd probably still be living there.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's not. He's in a home that he saved his money for and he purchased. Yeah. That happens now still. I have a woman that I advocated for who is now in housing, and she has a 16-year-old son, and he would like to get a job, but they are in public housing. If he gets a job, that's counted against his mother's rent.
That's right.
So we're teaching this 16-year-old boy not to go to work when he wants to go to work. He wants nicer sneakers. He wants to be, he's on the basketball team at the school. He wants to fit in, and they live in such poverty. He can't even get a job without really messing with his mom's situation. One of the statistics I read on your website that I was stunned by, and I've been doing this work for a long time, was um, if people are in different minority classes, they are twice as likely to suffer from homelessness as cancer.
Yes. I mean, first of all, uh, in some of the shacks, the likelihood of a kid eating some paint is extremely high.
Mm.
And you start eating paint as a little kid, you're gonna when you grow up, you got to deal with issues of cancer, as well as cerebral problems. So it, it it is a dreadful circumstance right now, where that allows that people are living in decrepit housing. It is shameful that it is happening in the world's richest country, and it, and if you it's exacerbated by the fact that millions of Americans uh, have not been able to understand that nobody wants to live like that.
Mm.
Uh, certainly, I mean, there may be people who are having um, some psychological issues, and so they live on the streets. But for the most part, I lived in public housing, and I never ever had a friend that come up to me and say, "Boy, we just can't wait until we can move into public housing. My God, we're doing everything we can to get into public." Nobody.
Mm.
And yet there are people who, and up here, I think most of my colleagues know when you start talking about housing, you better tiptoe because if you say something around me that would give me the feeling that uh, you know, that you're saying the people who live in public housing or people who live in rundown housing or just having a great ball of joy, I'm going to go off on them. Or if they say that persons are lazy, as you and I've talked about it, my dad worked 3 jobs. He worked at the Wichita Club. He's a maitre d', and on Saturdays he cleaned up the T.A. Lidikins and Son building, and then he served parties. So um, I don't even know how my father survived. He's 100 years old in good health, but I mean, the way he worked all of his life, and I was telling somebody earlier today, I don't ever remember him taking off for being sick.
Oh,
And I thought I'm going to ask him when I see him Sunday, if he ever missed a day.
yeah.
And so there are hundreds of thousands of people like my dad all over the country who are trying desperately to get into some decent, affordable housing.
Right. So what can we do to help? We've got thousands of people across the country who've been hand making blankets, who've been donating materials for other people to make the blankets, to make this giant art spectacle so that we can call attention to the problem. But once we call attention to the problem, we need action steps, right? What do you want people to do to help you push back on that notion that it's a good time to live in public housing, or
Right,
people don't want to work, or that people want to be homeless? What
right.
can we do to help you?
Well, you've heard all of these same things over the years, I'm sure. But I tell you, we almost had the most remarkable amount of money that our nation has ever even attempted to approve to deal with homelessness and houselessness, and also indecent and unaffordable housing. We tried to pass something called Build Back Better.
Mhm.
We lost by 2 votes over in the Senate. However, we're going to try to do it again,
Good.
and we would certainly need the support from organizations like yours to speak out, to provide testimony from individuals, sending letters, uh, giving us the stories of real people. Because I'll stand right on the floor and talk about that with letters in hand, because I think that's much more powerful than having us stand on the floor and debate ideologically. I think having real live stories about human beings is what moves things.
Wonderful. We can get you letters from the districts of the people who might be a little recalcitrant in your
Yes,
offices, and we can get people from their districts to tell their stories. I'd be happy
yeah,
to get you those letters.
that would be powerful.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. We're really grateful for the work that you're doing, and for the fact that you took a minute to let folks know that you care about them and what we're doing.
Well, when you asked me to talk about housing, you put me in the bra patch. Uh, yeah, I could do it all day and all night. So
Well, we'll
thank
ask
you
you
for
again.
inviting me.
My pleasure. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks.